Good, everyone. Happy Friday to you all. If you're celebrating Christmas, you're in the home stretch. Just a couple of days left. What's going on with my computer here? Let me fix that. And if you're celebrating other things, I hope it was really lovely or will be really lovely, whatever you're celebrating this holiday season. And if you're not celebrating at all, I hope you're enjoying whatever this season of your life chapter moment is bringing. Okay, so we are in day 23 of Healthy for the Holidays series. We are wrapping up the week on, is it worth it? We've been talking about discernment. We've been talking about whether or not things are worth it this holiday season and how to tell. And how to tell that separate from what the brain will tell you is worth it. I'm going to give you a couple examples today, one from myself, and then a couple from those of you who've been writing into me and telling me how you're managing this this holiday season. So we're going to wrap up today talking about shame and guilt as it pertains to this concept of, is it worth it? So just a quick reminder, if you haven't watched videos 21 and 22, go back and check those out. But just as a quick recap, I've been talking about how to make decisions about tempting food. Let's call it tempting food this holiday season. We know that there's tempting food everywhere, whether it's sweet treats or Chex Mix or your favorite foods being made during the holidays or whatever it is. There's a lot of temptations around. Well, how do we deal with that? Well, usually people will give themselves rules. Well, I can't have this, or I can only have this, or I can have this, but I can have this much, and I can only have this amount of calories, and lots of rules, right? And on the Wednesday, the day 21 of Healthy for the Holidays, I offered the opportunity to think about it differently and ask yourself the question, is this worth it to me? Then yesterday, I talked about how biologically your brain and your body, your physiology will always tell you, yes, it wants it. That's the wrong question to ask. We really want to be asking, is it worth it? Does this feel the best for me physically, mentally, emotionally? So go back and watch those two videos. Today, I'm going to give you a couple examples of how I did this yesterday, actually, and I'll tell you how it worked out for me. And then another one of you wrote and told me that you've been practicing this. She happened to have been involved in a move. And for her, recognizing her signals and recognizing that as she's moving, and she's moving locations, it's a really big move for her, and during the holiday season, and as she has learned through, well, she was actually one of my shift members in one of my programs. And so she knows this work intimately. But as she's learned through the nervous system work that we have done, and through asking these, is it worth it questions, rather than putting rules on herself, this is the beautiful part of what happened for her, is that in the past, it would be, can I eat this? Can't I eat this? And no, you can't. And then, yes, I want it. And there would be this battle, right? But in honoring her nervous system, which we did I introduced you to pieces of the nervous system in videos, what was it, 6 through 10. So go back and watch those. And through honoring her nervous system, and allowing herself to have some foods that felt comforting and nurturing and nourishing during this time that maybe somebody else might look at as, sort of junk food or, food that isn't serving her or whatever. For her, during this time, honoring her nervous system, it felt really nourishing. But what she found was that as she stayed aligned and asked herself, is this worth it to me? Does this still feel nourishing to me? Does this still feel aligned for me? What she found was that she naturally ate a whole lot less than what she normally did. And that's what happens when you start to really connect to your nervous system, to your alignment, to the person that you want to become. When you look at your food decisions from a nourishing perspective, physically, mentally, emotionally, and you stay connected and you use all these tools and you stay mindful and connected to the process, what happens is that you naturally eat a whole lot less than you would if you made a rule, said you can't eat that, and then battled yourself out with that rule. It's the pendulum swing that I was talking about the last couple of days. When we make a rule, I can't have this, that automatically triggers some energy, the negative energy, and attracting energy when we do that. I can't have this. Really heightens the attraction to the thing that we want. The pendulum starts to swing really far over here. I can't have this. I can't have this. I can't have this. I can't have this. The battle ensues. And when we let go of the pendulum, what happens? It swings way far in this direction, right? It swings well over here. And we end up over consuming and eating more than if we were taking the middle path, which includes permission to eat, staying connected to how much we want to eat of it. Does this still feel worth it to me? Is this really good? Am I really enjoying this? And when the pendulum settles out over here, we might still be eating some of the thing, but we're naturally eating consistently less, which paradoxically allows us to enjoy it more, right? And we eat less of it naturally. So there's no fight ensuing, which allows us to enjoy it more. So this is the beautiful place of the middle, where we're not making rules. The pendulum's not swinging this way, where we're over consuming and then filled with guilt and shame because we've over consumed. In this middle path, we have still consumed. We have had some, perhaps. We have said, yeah, this does feel worth it to me, but I'm going to stay connected and decide how much, when do I want to stop? Does it still taste good? Whatever. We're still consuming, but the battle is not there. So we enjoy it that much more, and we actually eat considerably less. Because here's the thing that most people don't really understand. Your body, your true body, doesn't actually want to overconsume food. We're not set up to overconsume and be uncomfortable. We're set up to seek food. We know that. We're set up to seek highly processed food with the way that processed foods are made. We know that too. But our bodies do not want to feel uncomfortably full. They do not want to overconsume calories so that we feel sluggish, tired, slow, unable to do the things that we want to do. Our bodies don't naturally want that. So if we're staying in this middle path, we're finding alignment, we're making intentional decisions, we're deciding what's worth it, we're using discernment, and we don't follow that up with guilt and shame, which leads to more overeating, then we find we're naturally eating a whole lot less. And this fear that we have of, if I let myself eat, I'm going to eat all of it, starts to dissipate when we do this. So I'll tell you my example. So yesterday I was, using my own advice. I use these tools every day myself. I'm just teaching them to you. And a wonderful, wonderful colleague of my husband sent him a beautiful Harry and David, gift basket full of all kinds of treats and goodies. And the whole family, myself and my daughter and my husband were all kind of trying all these treats and goodies and things like that. We were opening them and eating little bits and whatever. And it became very clear to me that most of the treats that were in there were not worth it to me. I would take a couple bites and, or maybe even one bite, that's kind of good, but not the best. Or, I kind of like that, but not the best. And my whole family is pretty practiced at discernment. Don't get me wrong, when it feels worth it, we eat it. But because we are so practiced at discerning what feels worth it, it's also very easy for us to say, actually, that doesn't feel really worth it. And we're going to put all the beautiful Harry and David things out for, everybody to enjoy that's coming over for the holidays, and everybody will enjoy it. But for us, it was very clear what was worth it and what wasn't. So there were these truffles and chocolate covered cherries and chocolate chip cookies. I mean, all kinds of things, right? And I'll tell you two stories. Number one, I was, these truffles, and I had a bite of the truffle. It was too much for me, too sweet for me, too rich for me. Immediately said, this isn't worth it for me. I'm not going to take another bite, right? Very easy to discern. Then there was what they call moose munch. It's, like popcorn, chocolate covered popcorn and caramel covered popcorn. I love popcorn. I was actually talking about popcorn yesterday, wasn't I? Or a couple of days ago. I love popcorn. And so popcorn does feel worth it to me. Okay. So I do have it does feel worth it to me. So I had a few pieces and I stayed connected. Does this still feel worth it? Does this still feel worth it? Right. And I stayed connected to myself. At a certain point, I knew that if I kept going, that the end result for me would be guilt and shame afterwards, right? If I kept blowing through the popcorn, guilt and shame would ensue because it's not serving me. It doesn't feel good. The first few bites of the popcorn, so delicious, yummy. Oh, I really love the taste. That feels really worth it to me. There is a turning point, and it's different for everybody when that happens, how loud it is. I'm well versed in knowing when my turning point is, but there's a turning point that says, okay, that's enough, because if you keep going, then there'll be guilt and shame. Why did I do that? I don't feel good after that. That was, 2-minute enjoyment of some popcorn, and now I feel frustrated that like it's sitting heavy in my body and there's a bunch of sugar that I didn't need and a bunch of processed, like, why did I do that, right? And I don't want to feel that guilt and shame. I don't want to feel that guilt and shame. Now, some would argue you don't have to feel that guilt and shame, just don't feel it. Here's where I disagree. Where I was going with that is that there are people who are sort of in the intuitive eating community or the health at every size or anti-diet that says, just eat it without the guilt and shame, right? The guilt and shame comes from diet culture. And here's what I'm telling you. The guilt and shame comes from inside for me that says, this food, this processed, full of sugar, full of corn syrup, full of processed foods, dipped in chocolate, right? These foods are delicious and it was worth it for me to have some. And I did have some, but blowing through my cues of, okay, that's enough. You've had some. Now be done with it. That's what brings on the guilt and shame. It's not the diet culture. It's not the health at every size. It's not that I don't love my body and that I should just eat all the cake. It's not all or nothing. When we're practicing discernment, when we're practicing, is it worth it? The other piece to really practice is there is a point where you have had enough. So going back to what I was saying about the body doesn't want you to overconsume. It doesn't feel good that way. The body is designed to beautifully balance its calories in and calories out and energy input and energy output, right? And when you are overfeeding it and giving it too much energy, it has cues internally that say, doesn't feel good. I've had enough. Let's pause. That's too much. That's too sweet. That's too whatever. There are physiological cues telling you to stop. We just blow through them emotionally. Processed food is designed to downregulate them. So we don't get our satiety cues, our hunger cues increase, those kinds of things. So from a physiological perspective, we get cues to blow through them. Emotionally, we blow through them, right? We're not paying attention, so we blow through them. So my point is, it's not so much that the guilt and shame comes from what diet culture is telling me I have to do. Not at all. The guilt and shame comes from, hey, I have just blown through my own innate cues that say that's enough. You had some, it was delicious, and it's going to turn into something that's not so delicious if you keep going. We have all experienced that, haven't we? That one slice of pizza was amazing. The fourth slice, too much, right? That piece of cake with the 3 bites, oh my gosh, so good. The second piece, too much. That one glass of wine with your friend that you really enjoyed. The 5th glass, too much, right? We've all enjoyed these things. And we've all felt the moment when we've overindulged. That's not a diet culture, an intuitive thing, a anti-diet, whatever. That comes from inside your body saying, hey, we've had enough. This is no longer aligned. It's no longer good for you. We can stop now. So my point in talking about guilt and shame is if you're paying attention, if you have done the first few steps, which is what feels worth it to me? Does this feel worth it to me? The truffle wasn't worth it. Nope, done. No more of that. Popcorn was worth it. Okay, how much is worth it? Had a couple bites. Ooh, that one was really chocolatey, really delicious. I would say, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 pieces in, and I started to go, I think that's enough. I think that's enough. I've had enough here. Once you go 7, 8 pieces, it starts to get louder, doesn't it? And that's when the fight can come in. You can't have any more. Yes, I can. No, you can't. Yes, I can. Forget the fight. For me, it was, is it worth it to keep going? Do I feel like I've nourished whatever emotional, physical, mental need that I had with the popcorn? It's a different line of questioning, subtle but important. If you start fighting it and saying you can't have any more, immediately that pendulum starts to swing over here and you really want some. And that's when you're going to blow through those cues and overeat it. If you ask a different question that says, have I had enough? Was that enough? And do I need more? Do I want more? Right? From a nourishing perspective, not want more from a psychological perspective, because remember, the brain, once it starts to get into that processed food, it's going to bypass your satiety cues. It's going to bypass the cues that said, I've had enough. So we're never asking it from Does it taste good? Do I want more? We're asking it from, does this still feel nourishing to me? Does this still feel worth it to me? Right. And that topic of delayed discounting that I talked about, which is, are you able to look at what you want in a future version of yourself, an hour from now, a month from now, a year from now, versus what your current self in this moment that is being hijacked by processed food wants? Do you have the ability to look beyond what's right in front of you for the sake of, you know what, that's not going to feel good later. I'm done with this. Now, I've been doing this a long time. I'm really practiced at it. I can hear that and feel that coming on very quickly of when it's enough. And I'll tell you the truth, sometimes I stop right when it's enough, and sometimes I don't. And when I don't, I always get the little nudge of, wish I'd stopped a few bites earlier. Next time I'll do that. And you practice and you practice and you practice. That's why discernment is a practice. It's not a yes or no. It is a constant practice. And there will be a lot of variables in your life that impact how easy it is to practice discernment. Right now, you've got the holiday seasons, lots of temptations, lots going on. That's going to impact your ability to have consistent discernment. So it's a practice. Be gentle with yourself, go easy on it, and practice the discerning. Okay, I hope that was helpful for y'all. Just checking the chat here to make sure we don't have any current questions. Okay, awesome. Thanks for being here, everybody. I will catch up with you next week. Of course, next week is a holiday week for a lot of people. I will be in and out, but I will be here as many days as I possibly can. We're going to start talking about how to look at 2023 differently. We're going to do a little bit of that next week. All right, everybody. If you are celebrating Christmas, I hope you all have a Merry Christmas this weekend. I will see you next week.